Chapter 16. Charleston House, London, England, June 2nd, 1889. Athena's knuckles were white around the brass knocker as she pounded on the door of Charleston House. This was the third time in 3 days they had found themselves in this exact position, desperate to get the attention of the scientists within. Ray's condition was worsening. Jamie had failed to arrive in London on time, and Athena found themselves run ragged with stress and chores. They needed Sherbet's cure more desperately with every day that passed. At last, the door opened ever so slightly, and the smoky, solid eyes of Seven looked down at the young person on the doorstep. "Greetings, Mix Helvetus." The machine's voice echoed behind him into the empty hall. It was getting late now, and in the twilight sky, Seven's eyes emitted a soft, ghostly glow, will-o'-wisps in the darkness of the doorframe, mesmerizing and unnatural. "Hello, Seven." Athena released the door knocker with a final clank, stepping back into the automaton's line of sight. "I need to see Dr. Quakeson," he said, trying to keep his voice level. Seven considered him for a moment, processing the request. "Dr. Quakeson is not present at this moment. In the same way Dr. Quakeson hasn't been present for the last 2 days?" "Affirmative," Seven nodded. Athena could see the mechanics of the being's neck shifting in the darkness of the doorframe. "Seven, I can see them moving in the window upstairs. I know you're lying to me. Let me inside." Athena put their foot into the door, wedging it open. "I won't ask again." Seven strained, though only slightly, to squeeze the door closed. "Mix Helvetus, it would be unwise to—" Athena slammed into the door and pushed past Seven, the automaton clanking as he struggled to right himself and stay upright. "I'm sorry, Seven. I'm going to see them. This is urgent. We need to be kept up to date on their progress." Seven closed the door, defeated. "Mix Helvetus, I am afraid I have been given a direct objective to prevent the doctor from being disturbed while they work. I must implore you to return downstairs before it is necessary for me to enact physical—" "Sherbet?" Athena yelled up the stairs, panting as he took them two at a time. "Dr. Quakeson, I need to speak with you about Ray." As the assistant sucked in deep breath after deep breath, they began to taste the shift in the air as they neared the home's second story. Previously, when entering Dr. Quakeson's laboratory, one was assaulted with an intense yet clean and clinical smell, chemicals and bleach, burning gases and boiling water. It was an aggressively fresh smell, which alerted the senses and made one's hair stand on end, the way a cool breeze in the first days of autumn might affect the lonely wanderer. This scent was different, however. The smell, as Athena neared the door to the lab, was thick and musty. Bookworm-chewed pages and rotting forest logs, sour milk and the sickly sweetness of rotted fruit. It was a heavy, cumbersome taste which reminded Athena of the underground dig site in Athens and made her hair stand on end for a very different reason. "Dr. Quakeson?" She opened the door, stepping inside before Seven could arrive at the top of the stairs. Athena gasped and then immediately slammed their mouths shut, their teeth clanging together. The room was coated in the dark, purple mold. Thick tendrils of it wound around furniture and up the walls, spreading like vines as it clung to the ceiling and snaked across the floor. The smell of decay inside the room almost knocked the teen over as they steadied themselves against the door. What had happened here? It should have been impossible for the fungus to have spread so quickly, and even more impossible for Dr. Quakeson to have allowed such an affront to the sterile workings of their lab. Athena pulled a handkerchief from their pocket and pressed it to their nose, attempting to block out the motes of mold spore drifting through the air around them. He eventually tore his attention away from the hellish spreading long enough to land on Sherbet. "It keeps happening," Sherbet grumbled to themselves again and again, hunched over the desk. They failed to notice Athena entirely, their eyes transfixed on a notebook which lay splayed open on the table, scribbled notes and illustrations filling every corner of the page. "But not anymore. I can stop it. I can block him out. Only her. Only you." Athena hesitantly stepped forward, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of mold on the floor. "Dr. Quakeson? Sherbet?" They inched closer, reaching out an ink-stained hand to tap the chemist on the shoulder. The instant before Athena's hand made contact, Sherbet wheeled around, grabbing her wrist and shoving her backwards, panting frantically, the noise muffled by the handkerchief which he clasped over his mouth. Athena! Sherbet released the young person's arm, letting them jerk away. What are you doing here? Athena took in the scientist's rough appearance. Sherbet's heterochromatic eyes were wild and frantic, darting around the room. They looked almost to be coated in a thin purple sheen, which distorted the colours and made the whites of their eyes seem dark and sickly. A steady flow of blood was dripping from their brown eye, the fluid encrusting itself on their face in a thick layer of matted crimson where they had failed to wipe it away. Most disturbing to Athena, however, was their veins. Athena had spent almost a month now caring for and attempting to study Ray's infection. They knew what his markings looked like, and the way the disease had seeped into his skin. This was different, however. Ray's flesh itself was blackened and purpled, as if the fungus had been growing on it, corrupting it, burrowing into his flesh from the outside. Sherbet's skin was entirely unlike that. The veins, so deep purple they were almost black, spread from beneath their collar, reaching up their neck like grasping claws seeking to strangle the scientist. The tendrils stretched along their cheeks towards their eyes, climbing ivy of rot, not unlike the vines which layered the walls around them. These veins, these were under the chemist's skin, festering below the surface, leaching the colour from Sherbet's flesh from the inside out as it forced its way upwards in bursts of black and purple capillaries. Dear God, Dr. Quakeson, Sherbet simply stared at Athena, emotionless, various vials and concoctions bubbling away behind them. Seven appeared in the doorway, breaking the uneasy silence which pervaded the room. My apologies, Dr. Quakeson. I tried to stop. Sherbet held up a hand. Don't worry, Seven. It's quite all right. Their voice was hollow, and their thoughts were far, far away, still concerned only with the notebook and the test tubes and the mold. Still concerned with Athena. Athena? What a surprise. Surprise was certainly one way to describe the emotions writhing in Athena's stomach. A more apt word may have been panic. The sensation crawled up from around his gut, and he could feel it tightening around his chest, threatening to strangle him as it wrapped around his throat. I came to ask about... for Ray, Athena managed to mutter, their thoughts a jumbled mess of their surroundings. Sherbet cocked their head. The motion was sudden, jerky and unnatural. A snapping of bones and muscles rather than fluid movement. What, for Raymond, exactly? At the mention of Ray's name, their eyes took on a distance to match the cadence in their voice. Oh. Yes. Yes, Raymond. Athena swallowed. Their gut instinct was to ask how the chemist had forgotten. Yet the madness in their purple-coated eyes and the darkness of the mold under their skin already answered that question for him. The cure, Sherbet. Have you made progress on the cure? Sherbet, their eyes becoming focused once again, pinpricked pupils in blue and gold pools, tilted their head back and laughed. It was a stilted, barking sound, so alien from the gentle chuckle Athena had grown accustomed to. The laugh ended in a shuddering cough which caused the chemist to double over, struggling to draw in deep, racking breaths. Athena couldn't help but notice that when the coughing subsided and Sherbet smiled back up at her again, there was a dark, viscous substance coating their mouth. In the light of the fireplace, Sherbet's teeth shimmered with an oily purple sheen. A cure! The word came out accompanied by another cough disguising itself as a laugh. Oh, yes, that is what I was doing, wasn't it? Trying to make a cure, they chuckled. Sherbet looked over at Seven, as if expecting the automaton to find the idea as funny as they did, and to possibly laugh along. Seven simply stood there, emotionless as ever. To think I ever devoted my time to that. Athena shook their head. Dr. Quickson, please. This disease is clearly... No, this isn't a disease, Athena. Sherbet threw themselves forward, gripping Athena's shoulders. It was not a threatening gesture. Rather, it was an embrace of excitement. We were wrong. We were all so wrong. This... Sherbet released Athena to gesture at the mold-covered walls. This is a blessing. We were trying to rid ourselves of guidance, of divinity and purity. Athena glanced at the doorway, attempting to subtly inch back towards it. Seven was not blocking the exit exactly, but should a quick escape be required, the automaton's presence would make things difficult. This is anything but purity, Sherbet. This is... Athena shook his head. Ray needs help, Dr. Quickson. Ray needs to come to his senses, Sherbet snapped, the abrupt change in tone making Athena jump. He needs to stop fighting her, to submit to her guidance, to let her in. That's what I'm working on now. They reached behind them and pulled out a vial of purple liquid from a rack, holding it up to the light. It worked for me and Easton. It's so... relieving. Let who in? Athena asked. Sherbet, you're not making any sense. Sherbet laughed again, rocking their head from side to side. Raymond really has kept you in the dark, hasn't he? How much has he told you about the voices he's hearing? About what they tell him? After everything she did for us, after everything more she could still do. Who is she, Sherbet? Please, you're scaring me. I don't understand. Who are you letting in? Sherbet went to speak, but their head jerked sideways, taking the rest of their body with it. No, they shouted, causing Athena to jump. Sherbet stumbled away from the desk towards a bookshelf. No, not that. That's not... I know I let them in, but they are a mistake. A false god, a traitor. They cannot keep breaking through. They won't, I promise. Sherbet rambled to themselves, pressing their hands to their temples as they hunched over. Athena, seizing the opportunity, dashed to the desk and swiped 3 stoppered vials of the purple liquid. What do you think you're doing? Sherbet growled. They looked at the vials in her hands, and another purple-stained grin split across their face. Eager, are you? I'm sure Endirian would love to be inside your head too. Come to think of it, I'm sure you'd love her in there just as much. She knows so much about you. Who's Endirian? Athena asked, trying to steady his voice. His hands tight on the glass vials. Is that who you're talking to? Is that who you let in? Sherbet didn't acknowledge their questions, continuing on their rambling tirade. She knows about them, Athena. She could tell you so much more than Ray even knows. Or maybe she has told Ray, and he's just too cowardly to tell you. Tell me what? Sherbet laughed, stepping towards her and swaying on their feet. Where do you think you came from, Athena? Do you think about that? Your parents? Your home? She knows. She could tell you. Athena's blood ran cold. They looked from Sherbet to the vials in their hands and back. It was nonsense. Sherbet couldn't be telling the truth. It was just the fever. It was them trying to trick her. There was no way there was really someone else in their mind. Something else in their mind. It wasn't true. It couldn't be. Oh, the things she could tell you, Sherbet continued. Aren't you curious about your parents? What they were? What you are? You don't even know. It's comical, in a way. As the chemist's voice trickled off, Athena watched in horror as Sherbet unstoppered the vial in their hand and drank it in a swift, smooth motion. The veins across their face and their hands pulsed with a purple light beneath their skin, and Athena could see a thicker purple sheen begin to glaze over Sherbet's eyes, tinting the blue and brown to strange and shifting purple and gold, the irises morphing into thin slivers of color as their pupils dilated. I need to get these to Ray, Athena stammered. Maybe he can do something. He could find out how to cure both of you. I'll help him. Oh, there's no need to take him any. David and Easton are already on their way to Ray's house with plenty of it. Sherbet chuckled, stepping closer to Athena in a stiff, jerking manner. They've been such a help for Endirian. We all have, and Ray will be so much more useful once he's tried some of this. Why don't you try one for yourself, Athena? See what it feels like to let her guide you. What will this do to Ray? Athena moved further towards the door as Sherbet advanced. The room suddenly felt very small, and Dr. Quigson suddenly felt very large. Free him, Sherbet grinned. A fresh drop of blood now fell from their eye and began its journey down their cheek. Its deep red now mingled with swirling black, like ink dropped into water. Maybe it is a cure, after all. The pain would stop if only Ray gave in. And that's what this will do. Help him see our side of things. Her side of things. It's quite vitalizing. Sherbet placed a hand on a large armchair, and as easily as if it were a toy flung it across the room where it smashed into one of the walls. Athena screamed in shock. Endirian is so much kinder than the false god was. So much kinder than those who abandoned you. She would never do that, you see. Endirian doesn't seek control. She does not wish to steal us away from ourselves like the false god does. That being only wants to harm us. To use us as its form here. Endirian wants to make us better. Isn't that what you want too, Athena? For things to be better? I don't care about whatever this Endirian wants, Athena shouted, moving towards Seven. You're sick, Sherbet. You're delusional. You're all sick, and we're going to help you. There were tears spilling from her eyes now, and her voice was hoarse, muffled by the handkerchief. It's the world that's sick, Athena, and Endirian will help to cleanse it once we let her through. We just need Ray to let her through. And I have a feeling he will be very much on our side by the time you get to him. Then Jamie and I will go to their mother, and... Sherbet laughed. That cold, barking laugh. Oh, I wouldn't worry about Jamie. I don't think you'll be hearing from them anytime soon. Athena stopped in their tracks. What does that mean? What have you done to them? Sherbet placed a purple-stained hand on their chest. Me? I haven't touched them, Athena. Easton has simply expressed concern for them, and he has assured me they won't be leaving their new home anytime soon. I believe that Strawberry was quite willing to help us with that. I wouldn't recommend you waste your time with them either. In fact, with everyone we know trusting Endirian's guidance, I'm struggling to see why you're not, Athena. They reached for the youth, who darted out of their grasp. Sherbet growled. Seven, why don't you hold our friend here still for a moment? Help him have a drink from one of those vials he's got there. Seven moved forward. Are you tasking me to... Just do it, Seven, Sherbet snarled. Seven took another step towards Athena. Mix Helvetus, I really recommend you cooperate. Stay away from me, Athena screamed, flailing an arm out at Seven, their wrists connecting with his metal arm with a clang. He ducked under the rusted joints of the machine and scrambled towards the door. Sherbet's laughter, interspersed with racking coughs, followed her down the stairs. It doesn't matter, Athena. Nothing you can do will change anything at this point. Day or two more and Ray will be ready. The portal will be open before you could even try and prevent it. Dr. Quakeson appeared at the top of the stairs. You can meet Indirian personally when she returns to us. I'm sure she'd love to see you given what you are. I think she'd appreciate your help in setting the world right. Athena was already out the door. They didn't bother to look back to see if they were being followed. They didn't bother to dry the tears now streaming down their face, their hair whipped around by the wind which blew against them as they hurtled down the streets of London. They barreled through crowds, knocking through groups of men and darting around well-dressed ladies. A police officer yelled at them. Athena didn't care. He didn't have time to care. They couldn't go to Ray. Not anymore. Not if Easton and David really were there, corrupting him further. Not if Ray was like that, driven to such incoherent madness. Only, was it madness? It all seemed so impossible. Of course it was, all of it. Yet that name, Indirian, it reverberated in the back of Athena's mind. A ghost of a memory, an impossibility of childhood. A childhood they didn't remember. A childhood they didn't remember, that they didn't have. Was Sherbet telling the truth? Did they know something about who he was and where he had come from? Athena pushed the thought away. It wasn't important right now. Then again, what was important now? What could they hope to do? She was just an assistant. He catalogued files and studied books and baked scones and brewed tea. They couldn't fix this. Not without the adults in their life. They were all gone, stripped away by the mold and rotted down to husks of themselves. Jamie. They needed Jamie. Athena finally stumbled to a halt on the bank of the Thames, the smell of the river hitting them in a wave. They laughed as they breathed it in, basking in the stench of the city and its disgusting, rancid yet entirely mold-free waterways. They breathed it in, they gagged, they laughed desperately because it was the only reaction their body could come up with to the harrowing event they had escaped from. At the end of it all, Athena knew only one thing. They would find Jamie, and they would fix this. Together.